Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Genelle Sedon, educator and owner of C&G Tutoring. What's up, podcast? Episode 80 of the On the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio. Welcome to the podcast, Genelle.
Hey, Bill. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is great. So I have a little, just kind of a cool little story to tell before we start. So this episode, I think, comes at great timing, being that you're going back to school.
Don't say the S word.
Yeah. So you're an educator, so it all kind of like works out. However, it wasn't planned this way. That it just worked out timing wise that you happen to be coming on, and back to school is about to happen. So the point of the story is a few weeks ago, a friend of mine who, shout out to Jimmy T. Martin, who was episode 55 of the podcast. Him and I were just texting, and he was just giving me some feedback and suggestions for the podcast.
Okay.
And he was saying, like, he was always like, hey, you should have maybe this person or that person. And I'm like, by the way, one of his suggestions was, ready for it, a teacher.
Here I am.
And sure enough, right after Jimmy said that and made that suggestion, I posted something on LinkedIn about me giving away some free On the Stack swag if you just sent me your address, and you happen to be one of them that sent me a message and said, like, hey, Bill, I'm Genelle, blah, blah, blah. And by the way, if you're ever interested in having me on your show, I'd love to do it. And now here we are. Like, it literally, I always say this because a lot of guests, like, it just, I don't know what it is, but it just seems it's always meant to be.
Yeah, and, serendipitous, right?
Yeah. So like I said, so shout out to my friend Jimmy T. Martin, and Jimmy, if you're not listening right now, you're dead to me. So now that we're like 3 levels into inception of things of meant to be, welcome to the show again.
Thanks for having me. That's awesome. What a cool story.
Yeah, it is. So where did this all get started for you? So you were a journalist before getting into teaching.
Yes, I was. I worked for the Times Leader here in Wilkes-Barre. I started at 19 years old. I was the newsroom kid, basically. Just kind of hung around and did an internship, and then went to finish the rest of my degree, and relocated to Washington, D.C. for a little bit. Worked out there at stateline.org. Shout out to Gene Gibbons, my old managing editor. Great guy. Taught me a lot of things and gave me a paid internship, which was amazing. And came back here to the Times Leader. I was lucky enough to have them hire me. And, I worked in the community news desk.
That's cool. So you said, what, you're 18 or 19 when you started writing?
19, yeah.
Why did you get into it?
I just wanted to be a journalist. I started at the University of Scranton going for my communication degree, and I just wanted to be a writer. That's just what I wanted to do. So the best thing to do to be one is to go and land some bylines. So I would go in and intern, unpaid, of course, a couple days a week when I was on summer break, and they would give me assignments and I'd go out and cover them. And before I knew it, there was my byline on the front page.
What was the transition from teaching from being a journalist to teaching?
Oh, well, that transition, okay, I remember I was sitting at my desk one day and I had just been out on an assignment and I wanted to go home, but something else had happened, like a fire or I think it was a fire, and I couldn't go home yet because, of course, when there's a fire, the journalists go out and cover the fire. And I thought, I should get my master's degree. Like, what could I get my master's in? And I had been teaching catechism at my church, St. Anthony's, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. And I thought, I think I'm going to go to school to be a teacher. And of course, I didn't have any money for a master's degree. And I applied to the University of Scranton, which was already my alma mater, because I got to skip the GREs. If you had like a certain GPA, you didn't have to take the GRE test. So I thought, oh, perfect. I don't have to take the test. I could just get right in, no problem. And I thought, all right, I'll take it one class at a time. I'll go to night school. One class at a time. It'll take me 10 years and then I'll have a master's degree. I was, 25 years old, and I thought, no big deal. No, I think it was 24. Yeah, 24. So I drive up to the University of Scranton, take a day off, meet with my advisor. Her name was Dr. Mabugwa. She was from Kenya. Amazing lady. Just walked in, didn't know her at all. She did not know me because when I went to the University of Scranton, I was a journalism and Spanish major. Education is in a totally different building. So I didn't have any of these profs or anything at that time. So I go in and we sit down and, she starts asking me some questions, and she said to me, okay, are you going to pursue this full-time or part-time? And I looked at her and I was like, I'd love to do it full time, but how does somebody afford to live? Like I have to work, and I don't think I could afford to do it full time, even though I wanted to. And she said, oh, okay. And I said, I did apply for like a GA-ship, which was a graduate assistantship. I said, but I never heard anything. And she said, oh, do you have any special skills or anything that, I could sell you on? And I said, well, I'm a journalist and I speak Spanish. And she said, I'll be right back. And I could still hear the clicking of those heels down the hall. She went down to the department chair's office, and lo and behold, she called me down in 5 minutes. The department chair, Dr. Lowe, shout out Dr. Lowe, what's up? I'm still afraid of you, but I love you. She was such a hardcore lady, but amazing. I learned so much from her. And of course, I was her graduate assistant. But she picked up the phone. She said, okay, you could write our educational newsletter. She called the financial aid office, said put Genelle in as a G4, and she'll be starting in the fall. And boom, that was it. They paid for half of my tuition. And I was on my way to becoming a full-time student once again.
All because you spoke Spanish.
Yeah, and I was a journalist. They needed somebody to put out the education department's newsletter every month. Yeah,
wow.
It was awesome. And Dr. Lowe loved Spanish, and she used to recruit all these Spanish-speaking students from Mexico, and she was very well-traveled around the world. So she spoke fluent Spanish herself, and, we just hit it off.
Speaking of well-traveled, didn't you travel to Mexico? You brought this tequila set in today.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that tequila set. I sat on 2 air flights with that. And I had 2 of them at the time. And the box was a chicken box and wrapped with chicken wire. And customs kept stopping me thinking I had chickens in there. And I'm like, no, it's a tequila set from Mexico. But yes, this I bought in the town of Tlaquepaque in Guadalajara. And it is just one of my, most cherished things that I have from when I lived in Mexico. And I went to Univa University and I lived with an amazing family. And this set has, the blue agave tequila on it. And it's just reminds me of that family because I lived with a host family when I was there, and the father, his job was a bodyguard for the man who owns all the tequila factories in the town of Tequila. So they drank a lot of tequila in that house for sure.
Drinking tequila in the town of Tequila.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it definitely was. Great place. Guadalajara is an amazing city with amazing people. I really enjoyed everything there, and I really got myself fully immersed in Mexican culture.
Tell me more about the culture.
Well, it's just a very welcoming culture. Never once was someone, looking away from the group of Americans or not wanting to help us. It was really great because everything is just so cheap. You could go out to dinner, for a modest, $20. And for a college kid at that time, it was great. And the university was beautiful because, they take advantage of having wonderful weather all year round. So they have open air classrooms. So you're in a classroom, but you're really outside. And it was just awesome. And there was just so much to do. We went to Mexico City. We went to Puerto Vallarta. We just went around the town of Tequila. There's a tequila train actually that we took, full tour. You drink the pulque, which is the juice that comes out of the blue agave before it turns into tequila and it's processed. That was really cool. We climbed the Teotihuacan pyramids. It's the sun and the moon pyramids built by the ancient Aztecs, and they were just amazing. I still can't figure out how they built them without any tools.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was just a really good time. I got to see a lot of Mexico and meet a lot of really great people while I was there. It was awesome.
That's cool. So how long were you there?
For the semester.
Okay. So you did a lot in a semester.
Yeah.
How long is a semester? Like 6 months or something?
Yeah, 4.5, 5 months, right? Yeah, it was really great.
Yeah, you did a lot.
Yeah, it was. You couldn't help it. It was just there was so much to do. There was so much to see. There was traffic circles. One of the biggest things that it still stays with me was the poverty. Especially in the streets of Mexico City, you have children just going around putting stickers on people. And I couldn't figure out why they were putting stickers on just the Americans, because they ask for a peso, which is just a penny. And then, they give the pesos back to their families, and that probably, buys them food for the day, to be honest. Like, we would go to this ice cream shop all the time in Guadalajara, and these kids would come in a lot. And, you know, as Americans, we would buy them ice cream because they were little kids. Of course you would. And I remember I bought this little girl ice cream once, and, you know, she thanked me and gave me this beautiful smile and just ran out of the ice cream shop. She didn't even taste it. I'm like, what is she doing? So I watched her, and she ran it over to her mom, and she gave it right to her mom. And then I called her back over and I said, come on, I'll buy one for you too. You know, there's just an amazing culture of family and community there, for sure.
Have you brought some of that culture back here?
I think so. I feel like I have that kind of culture in my classroom all the time because I'm an English as a second language teacher. So I have people from all over the world. You know, I've taught students from Turkey, Pakistan, Brazil, Ukraine, Poland, many Spanish-speaking countries, you name it, Vietnam, that I've had it. So I always have, even though sometimes I don't have to leave Wilkes-Barre, I have the whole world right in my room.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it really is awesome. And they teach me a lot, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, and one other thing you brought today too, and we skipped over what I think is also a really important chapter of your life, your very first job with Sunny Vending Company in West Pittston.
Yes, that was my Pop-Pop's business, his old school vending machine business. You know, you put the quarter in, you turn the crank, and you get a toy or slime or one of those, you know, high five things. And that was my first job. I was the capsulator, I guess you would call it. I would put the toy in between the capsules and then close it. And my Pop-Pop used to pay me $2 cents a capsule. So I would not only have to do them, then I would have to count them too. So
this whole educating thing and kind of dates way back to like when you were a kid.
Oh, absolutely. Education was always very important to my grandparents and to my mom, for sure.
Yeah. And I think you brought this journal too, which also I think is so cool. So tell me about that.
This journal is the story of my Pop-Pop's life. He wrote some of the best stories from my family in it. You know, he was in his 80s when he wrote it, and it's handwritten, and it's honestly one of my most prized possessions. It just, you know, if I'm missing him, I just pick it up and I read something. I read a page or two, or, you know, if I'm having a dilemma and I'm not quite sure, you know, what I should do or where I should go, I just open the first couple pages of the book, and he has lots of lines of advice in there. For sure. For example, my favorite is a lazy man can make a million excuses. And it's so true.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I know it sounds a little funny because it was probably translated from Italian. You know, it was something his mother would say to him often.
Yeah, so that's really cool. So he spoke Italian. Is it written in English?
It's written in English. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's some Italian in there. Like I hope I don't butcher it, but it's Beto Enzo, and it's a man who only thinks of himself.
Okay.
Yeah, those are some of his favorite sayings. Him and his mom, my great-grandmother, who I never met, but she certainly was an amazing woman. And I think sometimes that's where I get a lot of my business sense from and my drive, because my great-grandmother came to the United States when she was 14 years old. She did not know English. Her and her mom came because my great-great-grandfather went over to Sicily to get them, to bring them back here to Pittston, Pennsylvania. But while he was there, he passed away. So they had to come over by themselves on the ship. And my great grandmother had 8 children. You know, she cared for them. She also was a businesswoman herself. She used to have a grocery store in the bottom of her home on Pine Street in Pittston.
Wow. So there's a lot of businesses that date back to like, I think I was in that journal. I saw, what was it, 1920s?
Yes.
That's just so cool.
Yeah, and my Pop-Pop always told me that she would let all the miners buy on credit. Like if they didn't have enough money to support their families, she would say, take it and pay me when you can. And he said once that he figured out the books that she had, like old ones, and I think she had over a $50,000 loss. And this was, you know, probably the mid 2000s. He was telling me like around 2010. So that would be, you know, an equivalent of probably losing out on $1 million. So she really donated a lot of her proceeds to the community around her.
Wow. That's really great.
Yeah, and she spoke English. She went to the YMCA in Pittston to take English classes, and she learned English. And my grandfather actually reopened the store for a few years in the 60s. He just had that business sense in him for sure. But he ran Sonny's Vending for over 50 years. And, that work ethic and everything just definitely stayed with me.
Now, did you ever think that you would get into business yourself?
No, I really did not. I didn't.
So, how did it all happen?
Well, I always had this idea. When I started teaching, I was a private tutor. I always tutored. I loved tutoring, and I did want to open a tutoring center, but I just didn't have the startup capital for it. And I was looking at some buildings, just real preliminary. And just the rent and everything was just outrageous. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get this. I could never get this open. And then I realized a few years ago, I was like, you know what? It's just time to pull the trigger. I don't need to be a brick and mortar tutoring service. And so C&G Tutoring was started with a Google phone number and a Facebook page. And that's how we kicked it off.
So one day you just said, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah. One day in May.
You and your husband?
Yep, me, my husband, and our friend Dave Lewis. Shout out to brother. I always call him brother. Great guy. He taught across from me for many years at Myers High School. It was just the three of us, and we just tutored and tutored. I mean, I was tutoring 7 days a week.
And this is on top of you being, and you still are a teacher.
I'm still a teacher. Yes, this is on top of teaching and being a mom.
How'd you do it all?
You just go. If you have the drive, it's easy because you want to do it. And you're helping kids, and just watching the progress that they make is just amazing. Just breaking down those goals, shattering things that they wanted to achieve. It's awesome.
So do you think that there is a stigma that comes along with tutoring?
Yeah, I think it's still there. I think we have a stigma in general of education. We place this number or letter on, how smart someone is. That doesn't necessarily measure their intelligence. I had a friend in high school, and I guess I've always just been, a natural helper, motivator type of person. So I'll talk to you guys about my friend Sherman Mead. Hi, Sherman. I got to share this story.
Hi, Sherman.
It's so good. Sherman is the type of student that a lot of teachers probably didn't see the potential in. And he repeated 6th grade. And then he was in my class. And we were, he did fine for the rest of his high school years. I'm sure it was a struggle. He wasn't the most interested student. And we were getting to be, close to graduating. And I remember we were at our lockers or something one day, and I said, Sherman, did you take the SATs yet? No. I was like, are you going to go to college? Yeah, I want to. And I was like, well, you have to take the SAT. This is important. And he's like, all right. And I literally was just like, just sign this paper. I'll do everything else. And I, did the work. And we went to take the test at Wyoming Seminary, on a Saturday morning. Here I was convincing Sherman, come on, we got to get up early and go take this SAT test. And we did. And Sherman is a Penn State graduate, and he's an analyst for a Fortune 500 company.
Shout out to Sherman. We are.
For sure.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So, like I said, I think the traditional stereotype of intelligence is what we have to change in society. Just because someone gets a 95 on a test does not necessarily, that doesn't measure a student's intelligence. So I think if we stop focusing so much on grades and focus more on what kids are strong in, if they're a good teammate or a good classmate or a good partner, it's a lot more important than if they get a 98 on a test. So I think parents need to cheer on their own children for other things besides, just getting high grades.
Yeah, and I think the reason I brought it up is because, and you and I talked before it came on, but I shared with you that as a kid, I even, had some tutoring because I, maybe my grades slipped up a little bit in math class, and I think they're, even me myself, I remember back as a kid and being kind of embarrassed about it that I had to either go in early before everyone else came into school, or I had to stay late because I had to be tutored. And, it's not that I couldn't do it. It's just, I guess it wasn't my favorite subject. So I just,
Yeah.
I didn't care as much, and, but yeah, I think, unfortunately in some instances there's a stigma that comes along with it. And how do we get past that?
Well, it's just like anything else you want to be successful at. If you want to be good at basketball, you have to practice. If you want to be good at dance, you have to practice. You take extra classes. It's the same thing with math. If you want to be good in math, you have to put the time in. You have to put the practice in. There's nothing wrong with being tutored. I think once you get out of the elementary and high school level onto college, think of how many people have tutors in college. A lot.
Yeah. So it's not just for people like me who at the time, I was slipping up like there. So what
Right.
you're saying is that there's people that are, very smart that actually just get tutored just to practice and be better.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, the prep schools in our area, like Wyoming Seminary and Scranton Prep, most of their students on their honor rolls have private tutors. Absolutely. It's for anybody who wants to achieve an academic goal.
Yeah. So it's not just, hey, little Billy's failing a math class here. Right?
Right. No, definitely not. And a lot of times the tutoring comes in too, especially for the younger children, when the stress enters the home between the parent and the student and the child. Because a lot of times parent to child, the tutoring or the teaching or the homework can become very stressful, especially if the child isn't interested. So the tutoring kind of eases that family stress as well. So that's another benefit of tutoring. It kind of helps to repair, the rapport between the parents and the children if there has been, some kind of negative aspect when it comes to school.
And before you kind of mentioned a little bit about different learning styles or somebody who maybe just is a good teammate or a good partner, how do you personally, how do you adapt to all of the different learning styles of all your students?
Well, we get to know our students personally, and we get to work with them individually. So everything that they're learning is individualized specifically for them, which is awesome. I actually, this summer, I was able to tutor Sherman's daughter, my friend Sherman's daughter.
Coming full circle.
Totally. And she's a hands-on learner. So we were her name is Mira. Hi, Mira.
Hi, Mira.
I'm very proud of you. But Mira's a hands-on learner, and she loves dance. So she was trying to learn her multiplication times tables. So I would make a hopscotch course, with the multiples of 3. And Mira didn't mind studying that. We would do it together, throw the sticks, see who could do the jumps. But if I gave her flashcards, she would be bored to pieces. So when things are tailored specifically for each child, the achievement can be off the charts.
You're like a whole different breed of teacher.
I think so.
Yeah, you really are. I mean, you really care and you really put forth a lot of effort.
Yeah, I do. I love what I do. I really do.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit like 21st century learning. Like, how is it different now from, now that you're the teacher versus like when you were a student?
Well, the biggest thing is cell phones, and technology. You have to find a way to integrate the technology into the classroom without it also being a distraction. And they have to buy into what you're selling, because this new generation, they wanted to know everything yesterday. So you have to have some kind of way of encapsulating their attention. You have to keep it current. You have to be down with their lingo. And you definitely have to keep them on the edge of their seat. How
do you do that? Like technology. You mentioned like technology. Like what is there anything specifically that you do?
I use all kinds of technology in my classroom. I like to get the kids up and moving a lot. I think that's the biggest thing. I actually don't allow them to use their cell phones in my class. Most of the time I collect them and they're not usually happy about that. But if we are doing something, we do these quizzes, and you could do them on your cell phone and you kind of compete against your classmates. And then there's another app that I like to use. It's called Kahoot. So sometimes just to start the class off, I'll just take a class poll, like what time did everybody go to bed last night? And instead of putting your name, you could pick an animal. So then when you have to go in and check in, and then we just talk about it. And then before I know it, they bought in, and boom, we're ready to start with our lesson.
What about like virtual versus in-person learning? I know the last couple of years have probably been whirlwind of both of those worlds.
Yeah, I think things can be done well both ways. It really depends on the student, the way that they like to learn. Right now, we have a lot of clients, especially our SAT clients, and they prefer the virtual. But then we also have some clients who want in person. It's just your personal preference. I think learning can be done in both ways as long as it's right for the student. That's all that matters. I think we've opened up a lot of new doors, though. I have to say, like, some of my students who were not great in the classroom were awesome virtual learners. And I would say, like, hey, this is your niche. Like, you found your way. And then others, I'm like, don't worry, we're coming back in person soon. Just hang on a little more.
Yeah.
Because some of them really don't like computers. You'd be surprised, even though for their age, they're teenagers, you think they would love them. But not every teenager loves computers, for sure.
And they just maybe just can't learn that way.
Right. I don't think I could. I mean, I did take a couple online classes, but it was different.
That was my next question. How do you learn?
I'm definitely an in-person learner, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. And if I hear it, I remember it. I'm one of those auditory learners. So if I hear it, I remember it. So I used to get killed on a teacher who would test you on something that they never talked about because I didn't read it.
Yeah.
I wasn't one to do the outside reading.
Yeah, neither was I. What about test taking versus like projects?
Again, it all depends on the student. I like both. I try to do a match of both in my classroom. But me personally, I rather projects than tests. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a good standardized test taker.
I failed a lot of tests in my day.
Me too. It's okay.
Yeah. But hey, listen, you give me a project, I can just figure it out.
Right.
Like, that's like the difference,
Yeah. And I think we're changing how we do things in education. At least some schools and some teachers are, because we're getting into project-based learning. That was something that I really learned a lot of at the University of Scranton. They did a great job, getting you away from the old drill and kill methods.
What's that?
1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. The teacher at the front of the board talking, the kids at their desk writing vigorously, and no one's working together. No one's allowed to look around the room. You could hear a pin drop.
Scary stuff. I remember those days.
Yeah, most kids probably fall asleep that way.
What would you say, besides the book work, what do you say is the most important thing besides actual book work that is important for kids to learn?
The attitude, how you go into something. If you go into it with a positive attitude, the chances are you're going to have a positive outcome. But a lot of kids, what they do is they get defeated because maybe they didn't get a good grade on the last test, or maybe they didn't score as high as their friend did, or maybe their parents yelled at them for not getting, the grade the parent wanted them to get. And then they get down on themselves and they lose that confidence. And once they lose that confidence, it's very hard to get back. It takes time. But the positive attitude, they have to go in there with a positive attitude, and they have to be connected with their teacher. They have to feel some kind of connection outside of, just the teacher-student role. I try to be interested in I am interested in my students, outside lives. I say to them, hey, what'd you guys do this weekend? Or, how's your part-time job going? Did you guys win that soccer game? Those kind of connections are really important when it comes to educating our youth. They have to know that you care.
Yeah. What about, you mentioned confidence. How would you build back someone's confidence?
Well, you start from the bottom up. You give them a lot of positive reinforcement. So if you were my student, Bill, and we were doing math, which I don't think is your favorite subject.
I hate it.
And you got a couple questions right, I would say, okay, maybe if you get the next 5 right, we're going to go and do a hands-on activity. And then, you throw in the positive compliments. I actually put together some swag bags for my clients every so often to show them that, at C&G Tutoring, we're paying attention to what you're doing. We note the progress that you're making, and we're really proud of you. That's good. I think that's important.
Yeah. So, what about tell me a little bit about the services. Like what all do you offer?
We basically offer everything. So from kindergarten, preschool, actually, I should say, because we had some pre-K students learning Spanish virtually recently. But so from preschool up to high school and all the subjects in between for that. And then we have college tutoring and even adult classes, adults who want to learn, conversational Spanish or business Spanish. We do offer also Spanish lessons for adults. And then our SAT program is another great program that we have too.
Wow, it's a lot. So who does all of this?
A team of tutors, awesome tutors. I have a great team. We're up to a team of almost a dozen tutors, and they're just the best.
That's a lot.
Yeah, they're the best of the best, though, because I've taught in so many different schools in wilkes-barre area. I've taught at King's College, different places that I've been able to meet all of these wonderful educators. And, then when I started this business, I said, come and please be on my team.
Yeah. So you still teach at King's, don't you?
I do, yes. In the summers, I teach at their Hispanic outreach program. I think I just finished up my 9th summer doing that. And that is for Spanish-speaking students to come, not even Spanish-speaking, just Hispanic students to come and simulate what the college experience is like for 3 weeks. And they reside on campus. And then they take a multitude of classes. And I'm actually the English teacher that they have.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, shout out to Daphne Paramo at King's College. She's the new director. She's amazing.
Awesome. What would you say is the best lesson that a student or your students have ever taught you?
Well, they teach me every day. The best thing I learned from one of my students was a long time ago. I was teaching up at GAR, and I had this student, God rest his soul, he has passed away. His name was Eric McDonald, and he had this flaming red hair, and it was super long. And from the back, I probably thought he was a girl. And he just was a tough kid. He was a street kid, just really tough. And I probably had heard his name over the office loudspeaker, 100 times. And he's in my Spanish 1 class as a freshman. And he looked at me, because I just let them pick their seats, wherever they wanted to sit. And he looked at me and he said, "Miss, aren't you going to tell me where to sit?" And I said, "No, you could pick your seat wherever. If I have to move you later, I might. But for now, you could choose where you want." And he's like, "Wow, you're the first teacher who ever let me pick my own seat." I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah, everybody always knows I'm trouble. They always put me right next to their desk." I was like, "Well, in here, you come with a blank slate." So that is one of the biggest things I always try to do. I don't try to judge any of my students for what they've done before or with any other teachers. With me, they're my student. It's a blank slate. We start fresh. Respect is a two-way street. You have to give respect to get respect. And that's just the way I've always started things off in my classroom, and it's worked out really well.
So you brought a book with you too. What's the significance with that book?
I love this book. This is from Iris Krasnow, the author of Surrendering to Yourself. You Are Your Own Soulmate. She was one of my professors at the Washington Semester Program in Washington, D.C. In 2004. I was accepted into this program, and she was amazing. She was a journalist for United Press International, a mother of 4, and a professor. And I got to know her very well because I was in this program and she needed a teaching assistant. So I volunteered because I needed the extra money living in a city. And she just taught me so many lessons about life and just to go for everything. She was just an extraordinary woman who basically never took no for an answer. And I think I kind of do the same thing. She just taught me a lot. She was just awesome. She was very eclectic, probably if you saw her or you spoke to her, you would think she would be very disorganized and aloof. But once you got to know her, she was just fascinating. She really was. She was just such a cool lady. And she had 4 boys.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was awesome. And she used to commute to work every day from Annapolis, Maryland. Yeah, it was really neat in her yellow Ford Focus.
Important.
I know.
Important note there.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for that.
And then she would get out of this car and she had this crazy curly hair, and it was always all over because she would just do all this thinking and things when she was driving. And she would have notes of paper all over, with things that she was planning on doing or achieving. And she is a published author. She has a few books out and I've read them all and they're very inspiring for sure. She was definitely one of my inspirations as a powerful, educated woman in life.
Wow, really cool. And it kind of all ties together, like with your journalism and teaching and...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. She definitely showed me that there's a way to be a journalist and a teacher. And hopefully in my future, I become a writer. You know, I have a lot of ideas for books, and it's just something I'm looking forward to as I get older.
Can you share any of that with me now, or is that like under lock and key?
No, there's just some great stories of some teachers that I've worked with and some students that I've had that, you know, these stories would just make you really laugh.
So what you want to like write your own book?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like As the School Bell Rings, or, you know, Beyond the Classroom Walls, something like that.
I like Beyond the Classroom.
Thanks. Yeah.
I think that's very fitting.
There's a lot of a teacher's job that goes way beyond the classroom.
Tell me more about it.
Well, one, for example, I had this student. Okay, so let me set the stage first. Okay, I'm on sabbatical because I had my son in 2017, and I was moved from Myers High School to Coughlin, and I had never taught at Coughlin before. So, you know, my stuff was just there in boxes until I came back to work in February. I was out for the first semester. So the woman who was in for me had, you know, the students' names and folders in them. And I used to take attendance by checking those folders. And this one student, her name was Yosangeles. Hello, Yosangeles. Mateo Gomez. She's such a good kid. But she was never there. I'm like, this kid never comes to school. And I asked like a couple of the other girls in the class, like, where is this? Who is this? Is she dropped? Is she here? And they were just shrugged their shoulders. They didn't know. So finally, you know, maybe 2 weeks into my return there, she shows up. And I said, oh, you're Yosangeles. Like, you know, nice to meet you. I'm your new teacher. I've been waiting to meet you. I was kind of hard on her, you know, but she was very shy, didn't speak a lot of English, and just extremely quiet. And you could just tell, like, there was something on her mind for sure. So she came to school, I would say, a couple days a week, let's put it that way. And finally, you know, the work she did was great. She would hand things in, and she was a bright girl. She is a bright girl, I should say. So I finally, after class once, I said, you know, Yosangeles, could you stay for a minute? I just want to talk to you. And I said, like, your work is great. Like, but if you want to learn English, you have to come to school every day. And she shared with me that she was pregnant and she was having a baby. She was 16, and her mom had thrown her out of the house, and she was living with her boyfriend's family. And it was hard for her, you know, to get up and get to school, to be motivated to do that. So I just, you know, every time she came, I would just compliment her on her work. Good job. You know, how you feeling? This type of thing. And finally, the LIU has this program called Project Mom. So they have a coordinator. Her name is Megan Mead, and she would come in and, you know, just make sure that these girls were going to the doctor's appointments that they needed to. They were, you know, getting into the social programs that they needed. Yosangeles, we come to find out, because she doesn't speak English, so I'm translating a lot for the Project Mom coordinator between her and Yosangeles. And me and her looked at each other at the same time, because she hadn't been to a doctor. She only went the first time that told her, you know, you're pregnant, you're having your baby, and that was it, because that's what they do in the Dominican Republic. That's typical. But in the United States, you know, prenatal care is key, right? So we got her to, you know, start going to the doctors, but it was hard because we had to kind of try to find a doctor that spoke Spanish. There's not that many in the area, but we did, and made her a couple appointments. And, you know, she was a junior. She was in danger of failing the year. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's just what it was. And I told her one day, I said, listen, you have like 30 days to turn this around. You don't have to get an A. You have to get a 70. As a junior, you're going to fail. If you make it to your senior year, there's programs that will try to do everything so that you're not considered a dropout. So she listened, and she did it. And she became a senior. She had her son, I think he's born like July 3rd, because the nurse from Geisinger Hospital called me the day after he was born and said, your student is here. She wanted me to call and tell you she had her son. And I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. His name is Ian Sebastian. It worked out because my son is a year older than him. So what happened was I would just give her everything that my son would grow out of. So it really helped her because she was a teenage mom. And so she comes to her senior year and she's having a hard time with childcare. So she went to cyber school, but she finished and she graduated and she's still attending LCCC right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways. It's more than just,
it's more than just the classroom.
Yeah. It's so much more than just the classroom.
Wow. That's really incredible.
And that's one out of, 100 different students that I've had that, I've just gotten to know or helped as much as I can.
That's great.
Yeah.
I know I have a lot of teacher friends that'll probably be listening to this. So is there any piece of advice maybe that you can offer to them? Maybe something, new to try or different or just anything in general?
I don't even know if it's that. Like I said, you have to be in it for the right reasons. There was just something telling me to be a teacher. I mean, I even remember my own mom telling me, Genelle, why are you going to be a teacher? We're not political. You're never going to get a job. And I was like, Mom, it's all right. Sometimes they have to hire people who just know something. Not everybody has to be politically connected. And I was just lucky enough to be hired 2 days before school started at wilkes-barre area.
So you beat the odds.
I beat the odds for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was just meant to be for sure.
So what's going on at Wilkes-Barre Area School District?
Well, the new school's opening. It's supposed to be state of the art. I haven't seen it yet myself. And we're merged, We're merged. And it's going to be a big year for Wilkes-Barre area for sure. And a big year for all of our awesome ESL students too.
Yeah. Are you excited for it?
I am. I can't wait to meet them because I usually have the same students every year, which is great because I really get to know them. I'm going to be sad because I'm going to miss the students that I had at Coughlin. But I know they're in good hands and I'm going to be meeting my new middle school students. So I'm excited for that. And I have some people on the faculty list I've worked with before and some people I don't know personally. So it's going to be great.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to meet and steal some amazing ideas too.
If anyone's listening and, wants tutoring, needs tutoring, how can they connect with you online?
They could find us on Facebook, they could find us on Instagram, or they could go to our website, www.cngtutoring.com.
Do you have a message or any last thoughts you want to leave with our listeners?
I just want to say that, education is so important, and education does not necessarily, again, mean grades, numerical grades. So be patient with your own children. And, be proud of them for whatever it is they are successful at.
Genelle Sedon, CNG Tutoring, on the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door Studio. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag On the Stacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on the Stacks.